So welcome everyone. My name is Justin Adams. I work for the NASUWT in the recruitment team, and we've been running webinars throughout the summer, which hopefully you'll have had an opportunity to attend some of our others. But this is our final week of the seminars or webinars, sorry. But we will be running more hopefully later in the term. But of course, as you're our members, we will contact you and invite you to attend the webinars, so you'll get notified of them in advance. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about e-safety. You may already have had an element of that training as part of your teacher training, but hopefully what we're going to discuss today will be a slightly different spin on what you've already covered, or hopefully a very different spin, but it's just intended to make you think. So we'll start off. If I just share my screen so you can see the presentation. Oh, I should say, sorry, before we continue, this isn't being recorded, and also for anyone who's worried and hasn't attended a webinar before, your video and microphone are automatically turned off, so we can't hear or see what you're saying, but you can use the chat function throughout the webinar. And I'll try and address any things that come up in the chat as we're going along, but as it's sort of difficult to manage the two, I hope you'll forgive me if I do occasionally miss something from the chat. Right, so it always takes a little bit of time for these things to work through, doesn't it? Or it does for me. I don't know if that's just my unfortunateness, but right, so as I said, we're going to be talking to you about e-safety. Most of you will be newly qualified teachers. We might have a few students in here as well, so hello and welcome to all of you. Just to start off with a little bit of fun, let's see how many of these you can identify. Right, so unfortunately I can't seem to see the chat at the moment. There we are. Right, so here we are. I can see your chat box now, so I can see your replies. Right, if you can just type in the chat box roughly what percentage of those do you know? I'll go over them in a minute. Some of them are a little bit more obscure, like PAW, which I think Alison has just posted in the chat. Claire said 80%, that's good. 85% from Laura, that's still quite impressive. All bar 2, that's interesting, well done. Right, 40%, 75%, so it's quite vague, but most of you are quite high, so well done, I'm impressed with that. I'll start off in the top left. YGM is you get me. LOL, laugh out loud, although some people, I think less nowadays, thought it used to mean lots of love. And I had a colleague that used to sign up for all her emails in a previous job with LOL. And I thought it was really odd that she would put that at the bottom of the message, and it turned out she thought it meant lots of love. But that was sweet, but a misunderstanding. PAW, which someone's already mentioned, is parents are watching, or parent over shoulder. POS is something else that's similar. They're mostly Americanisms, but you never know, you might see them pop up, especially if those of you who've got children of your own and you're monitoring their social media. NP, no problem. PMSL, pissing myself laughing. To be honest, TBH. IKR, I know, right? OMG, oh my god. WTF, I won't tell you what that is, but hopefully you'll all know. If not, ask someone you trust who's not going to go and tell lots of other people. IMO, in my opinion. DM, that varies depending on the platform, but it usually means direct message or doesn't matter. I'll say if you see it on Twitter, it'll probably mean direct message, but in text speak, it's probably more doesn't matter. BBZ, babe. CBA, can't be asked. HMU, hit me up. ICYMI, in case you missed it. BTW, by the way. And NSFW, if you ever get an email to your work email address and that's in the heading, don't open it because it means not safe for work. Although, why anyone, and presumably most of your friends that would email you wouldn't use your work email address. And if they did, they know you're a teacher, so they wouldn't think to send you something inappropriate. But anyway, it's worth bearing in mind. So that was just a bit of fun, a bit of an icebreaker. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to look at the common issues that face teachers when they're using technology, e-communications and social networking. We'll also give you some tips on how to use all of those things safely. And then finally, we'll talk about what to do if there is a problem. Now, for the vast majority of you, hopefully there won't be a problem, but it's important to know what to do if something does go wrong. Being a union, people usually contact us when they need support. That tends to be the vast majority of the member contact we have. There are other things as well, but for a large part of it, people contact us when they need help. So we get to see that unfortunately sometimes things do go wrong. And one thing that I noticed, particularly at the beginning of lockdown, when we all very quickly had to adjust to new ways of working, particularly in schools, some of it involved using new technology or using technology we were already familiar with, such as WhatsApp, but in a different way. And there was a distinct increase in casework that we had from people who had mishaps, shall we say, with the technology. And a number of them were things like WhatsApp groups where someone had created new work WhatsApp groups, so senior leadership and different groups of staff. And a few of our members, certainly a few, had accidentally posted in the wrong WhatsApp group something complaining about a manager. So one person had posted it in the leadership group, complaining about the assistant head because they thought they were messaging another colleague instead, which is very awkward. And you can imagine how that must have felt. I don't know if anyone here has ever accidentally WhatsApped someone by mistake or sent an email to the wrong person. It's a horrible feeling, isn't it? And it's, but anyway, we're going to look at what to do if there is a problem. Excuse me. So these logos here, you hopefully recognize. I know it's difficult using a typing chat, but is there anything on there that people aren't sure what it is? I'll go through them in a minute. And just while you're looking at them, the size of the logo on there roughly is proportional to the others in how much use or how commonly used that platform is. So I think Facebook, to be honest, should probably be slightly bigger because despite everything, Facebook is still the most common platform. The one next to LinkedIn, that's LinkedIn here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor? That is Flickr, which is a photo sharing platform. We'll discuss how these can be useful in a little while. So in the top left, we've got YouTube. Most people use that for viewing content and rather than posting, although some of you may have your own YouTube channels. If you do, then it's worth having a look at your school policy just to see whether they have any rules in there about conduct on YouTube and having a social media presence. I mean, it's becoming more common now. People have their own sort of channels or platforms to stream stuff. But do just think about how that might impact on your school. Again, a few years ago, we had someone who was offered a job in the school, and he had quite a good following on YouTube. Not one of the big influencers, but it was significant for him, and he was posting a lot of advice for young people about how to live their lives well. And the school felt that that was a conflict of interest with his teaching. and he didn't want to compromise his YouTube creativity, so essentially he didn't accept the job. So just bear that in mind. You might have to choose between your priorities, what's more important to you. So then we've got the white P in the red circle, that's Pinterest. The flame, I won't ask anyone to expose themselves by saying what that is, but that's Tinder. Then we have WhatsApp. Underneath that, the white ghost in the yellow square is Snapchat. Then we've got Twitter, Facebook Messenger's the lightning bolt. Then you've got TikTok, which is something that's really increasing. We've already talked about Flickr, then LinkedIn, and Instagram and Facebook underneath that. Most of the, I mean, what we're going to talk about today really applies to all the social networking platforms, but in sort of different ways, because we use the platforms in a different way, and the amount you can share on a platform varies as well. But we'll pick out some of the key issues as we go on. So what are the issues for you as teachers? I've already talked about a few things, such as people posting in the wrong group. But does anyone have any other ideas of something that might happen with Facebook, some of the common problems with Facebook? If you can post in the chat anything that you might have come across. Or even Twitter and Instagram, actually, cover all of them. Yeah. Friend requests from students and parents, that's right, David, yeah, that's a really common one. And Claire as well. Yes, it is something that happens, and we'll come back to that in a little while. But yeah, colleagues and becoming political. That's actually a very good one. People use social media in different ways, and particularly with Facebook and Twitter, it all depends. Well, with Twitter particularly, it depends on who you're following and how you want to use that platform. You can choose to follow just comedians or parody accounts, or you might want to use it as a platform for voicing your opinions on politics or environmental issues, anything like that. And similar with Facebook, some people purely use it as a way of networking, literally as a social network. Others try to use it will also not use it for that, but also use it to share their opinions on potentially sensitive subjects, which may or may not be controversial, but other people might not share those opinions. Yes, pupils and parents finding you is very important. The employers finding you as well. No one's mentioned that. Does anyone think that their employer might have, if they've got, well, those of you who've got jobs lined up, does anyone think that their employer might have Googled them, or any of their new colleagues might have Googled them? Because I can assure you that some of them will have done that. It's really common now. You know, people do search on social media to find out information about people. Has anyone? You have? Oh, someone's Googled themselves. Thank you. Before interviews, did anyone find anything that when they Googled themselves, did anyone find anything that they were concerned about? You don't have to tell us what it was, or even you don't have to expose yourself by saying that. Someone knows Rachel, a training provider, Googled them. It does happen. If you haven't done it, I would highly recommend that you Google yourself, and also bear in mind that certain tags after your name will oh yes, is that Ray? Sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Ray. His surname contains a common swear word, and that's very unfortunate. That again links to something we'll touch on later about hashtags rather than names. Alice has said that she changed her name on Facebook so that she can't be found easily by parents and students. That's a really good way of getting around it. One caution I would put with that is that if you're using the same email address for different accounts, for different social media things, or even just to communicate with people as the email addresses are intended for, social media wants us to connect, so it'll use things like phone numbers and email addresses to track down. So sometimes just using your name is enough so that it won't be obvious. But if you really want to hide something properly so that you definitely won't be found, in some cases you may need to um, create a different email address that is only used for that. For an example, Twitter, if you set up a Twitter account to tweet about a particular issue you care about, but you don't necessarily want people to know it's you behind it, then and you don't want it to be associated with your work because it might cause difficulty, then I would recommend creating a new email account. But yes, you can use a different name or a maiden name if you're married. But it is one way around it. Oh, sorry, I was saying if you're Googling yourself, use certain tags, so your town you live in, maybe the school you work, or the school you went to, or another place you've worked, just to see what comes up with that. And we'll cover in a bit how to deal with it if something comes up that you're not happy with, because there are things that we can do if you're a bit worried about what comes up. And I'm not necessarily talking about, I don't know, some scandal that you might have been involved in, but it might be something that isn't the end of the world. It's not going to destroy your career, but it's just not that professional thing that you want people to get the first impression of you. So, your digital footprint. Cyberbullying of teachers. As you might expect, this is something that has been on the increase over recent years. Has anyone heard of a website called Rate My Teacher? If you haven't looked at it, then I would say probably don't look at it. But some of you probably will have done already. It's essentially a website for pupils to go on and rate their teachers. So they'll go on, look at the school. If the school's not on there, they'll add the school, and then they can rate their teacher. Now, I looked at it a while ago, and I was quite surprised that a lot of the comments are actually quite positive. But occasionally there is something really negative that's been put on there. And the website is hosted in America, so it can be quite difficult to get things removed. David searched for one of his university lecturers on there. I hope there was nothing too terrible, and unless indeed you were going to put your own review on there. But that links to, not the best comments, he said, oh dear. That links to the cyberbullying of teachers, because there will be content that you may or may not see online, but that other people have put on there, which you might not be happy with. It could be derogatory comments. It used to be that most of the conversations parents should have complaining about school and teachers happened at the school gates and then they finished. But now we're contactable or 24 hours a day, really. So that conversation will now continue on a WhatsApp group, on a Facebook group, or usually not Twitter, I would have thought, but or somewhere else, but usually on those sorts of groups. And it can spiral out of control. It's very easy for people to talk out of turn when it's not face to face. That website was Rate My Teacher. I'm sorry, someone just asked what that is. I should say with the chat, when you're posting a comment, there's a little drop down. When you say you can either post it to all panelists, which is just for me to see, or you can post it for everyone to see. So choose as and when you want to post to everyone. But just so you know, the chats, for those of you for those that have only posted to panelists, it probably looks like I'm making things up because it's not showing the whole chat. Right, so derogatory comments do happen. Fake profiles. This is something that, again, it happens occasionally where the cases we've had tend to be where a teacher has left the school, and then the pupil or pupils will set up a fake profile for that teacher that's left, and then friend other teachers in the school to try and get access to their profiles and see what's happening in their profiles. Now, I would hope that once you access the profile like that, you would realize there would be enough tells in there to indicate that it's a fake profile. But if you do have any concerns, don't be worried about waiting until you can speak to someone face to face, or if you have their numbers, swapping numbers with them, or indeed speaking to colleagues. But this does unfortunately happen from time to But it's not just Facebook that this happens on. We had another example of a teacher who was on Tinder, and pupils found him and set up a fake profile for someone to and arranged a date with him. And he went to this bar or restaurant, I can't remember which one it was, and was stood up. And it later transpired, they found out when students were laughing about it, that the students had set up a fake profile, and it all came to the surface. Now, obviously, that's horrible for him. It's not career destroying, but it's just a really unpleasant and humiliating experience. So, fortunately, the school were really good on that, and they came down quite hard on the people who had done it. But you know, it's just one of those cautionary tales, unfortunately, isn't it? Right. We did a survey. It was about 4 years ago now, so we should probably be doing another one soon, to be honest. But 60% of the teachers that responded said they'd seen a negative comment about themselves on social media, which had been posted by a pupil. And that's just pupils, that's not parents. And that was across various social networks. Facebook was the main platform used, and that was, I think, 83%. Yes, 83% of the comments were on Facebook. So, although it was across platforms, Facebook is very clearly the main one. And then Twitter came second. 63% of those people didn't report comments that they'd seen, which is unfortunate. And 43% of the people that responded said they'd seen comments from parents. So it was 60% by pupils and 43% from parents. But the majority of our members didn't, the majority of teachers didn't report the comments. And they said the main reason was that they thought it wouldn't be dealt with. So they didn't think it would be taken seriously. And I think it's sort of indicative, really, of how social media evolved and people's attitudes towards it, and they worry that because it's online, it's a digital world, it won't be taken as seriously as perhaps someone calling them out in the car park. So we've been campaigning quite heavily on this to get some statutory requirements placed on schools, and to have a robust policy in place, and also, well, and have a zero tolerance policy towards any kind of detrimental social media or online comments about teachers. We've also been campaigning for teachers to have the right to anonymity, so for it to be basically unlawful to name teachers on the internet without their permission. That's a really good question from Rachel. She's asked if this is more of a problem for secondary school teachers. Some elements of it is, but given that a lot of the social network sites have a minimum age, so for example, no primary school children should be on Facebook, however they are. We do see, unfortunately, a large number of cases from primary school children as well, but the majority do, you're right, the majority are secondary, but it is an issue in primary. You know, children are, well, we're all surrounded by technology, but this next generation are growing up with it, whereas some of us, particularly people my age, have seen it evolve. You know, when I was in school, we didn't have the internet. I know that might seem like a really alien concept to some of you, but even when I was in college, we didn't have the internet. It was just kind of evolving, and you could, I think probably towards the end of college, people started getting email addresses, which is a really alien idea. So for the current generation, they've grown up with this, and it's second nature to them. They don't see any difference between the real world and the digital world. So I'm going to do a quick quiz now. This is why I haven't gone into too much detail before on some elements of this. Oops. Right. I'm going to share a poll so you can actually vote. This is exciting. Right, the first question, well, you can see them on the screens now. Should teachers have parents as friends on Facebook? Then, should you be able to use Twitter on a residential trip? Is it all right to take photos of your class on your mobile phone? That's your own mobile phone. And is it okay to use Instagram whilst you're off work ill? And finally, can your employer sack you for something you post on Facebook? I'll give you a minute or two to go through those. Everyone's done? Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Right. So, should teachers have parents or friends on Facebook? 94% said no, and 6% said not sure. That's interesting because usually there's a couple of people say yes. Are any of you going to be teaching in small communities? So, I don't know, sort of like Cornwall or Devon or somewhere rural in Northern Ireland, maybe, Scotland, somewhere rural anyway. But that tends to be the sort of place where you're more likely at some point to have friends who have children that you will teach. So if you are already friends with those people, David said some of his friends have kids at his school already. In that instance, if you're going to be teaching their children, is that appropriate? You should check your school policy. Have a look, because some schools have a very strict policy that says you're not allowed to be friends or connected with parents on social media, on your own private social media, sorry, with parents, with pupils on social media. So if you are already a friend with someone and you happen to be going to teach their child, then you might need to have a conversation with that person and say, look, just while I'm teaching them, you need to unfriend each other. However, your school might be all right with it, and you might just have to have a conversation with that friend about privacy settings or checking your privacy settings. But for example, if they are friends with their children on Facebook, and so the children can see what you're posting because you haven't got your settings quite tied down, your security settings tied down as much as you could, that might be an issue. But for the broadly speaking, if a parent tried to friend you on Facebook, then we would say definitely do not accept that friend request, because you can kind of imagine how that might go. Using Twitter on a residential trip, this one's a bit more split. 50% said yes, 28% no, and 20% said not sure. If we're talking about your personal Twitter account, then there hopefully will be time, or there should be time on a residential trip when you are no longer placed in charge of those pupils, or they're in bed, so you haven't got direct supervision of them. So it's okay to use your Twitter account. However, if you're tweeting a picture of a lovely castle while Tabitha has fallen off a wall or off a cliff or something, then obviously you're going to be in trouble. It's about appropriateness and context, really, and just thinking about how it might be viewed by other people. Okay, thank you, David. There won't be a recording of this, but we will be sending you some additional information at the end of this. At the end of this presentation, so don't worry, you'll get some extra information about it. So yes, just be careful, think about how other people are going to view what you're posting, and whether it could be interpreted that you're being distracted when you should be doing something else. We would strongly recommend that you don't use your personal Twitter account to tweet information on behalf of the school. So some schools will use Twitter or another social media account or platform to keep parents informed of the progress on a residential trip. And it's usually a secure group that they can access to look at photos and whatever else, and little updates and snippets. That should really be on the school's account, not on your own account, just for safety's sake. Question 3. Is it all right to take photos of your class on your mobile phone? 17% said yes, and everyone else said no. This one's a bit more cut and dried. I would say no. Well, the union position, obviously. Union position is not to do that. the technology is quite cheap. You can buy a phone, or even they could get second-hand phones or digital cameras that should be available for you to use to take pictures of children. Going back to something I said before about technology wanting to connect, depending on what phone you have, I mean, if you have an Apple phone, say you've got an Apple phone, you've got iPad, and you've got a Mac, you take a photo on your phone and it uploads to the cloud, that photo is already on your home computer theoretically. So if you've taken a picture of pupils in the school, potentially that photo is already available to whoever on your iPad or your Mac, and you might have to delete it more than once to actually get rid of it. We have come across schools where, or we've had people come to our seminars who have said the school's got a really great policy, and that might be something along the lines of you take a photo on your own phone, but you have to delete it before you leave the school premises. And it has to be witnessed by a colleague when you delete it. Now, what happens if you just happen to be the last person to leave school that day and you can't find anyone to witness you deleting the photos? You've been working late, whatever else has happened, and then what do? You have to leave your phone in school unattended. Is that worse than you taking it home? You know, it's potential problems that, whilst they might be unlikely, they're avoidable. So we would always say, don't use your own equipment, whether that's a mobile phone or a laptop. Similarly, with when we talked about YouTube, one of the issues that can come up with that is you have a YouTube account and it stores your liked videos and people you're following. If you use YouTube as an educational tool, which some people do, it's best to create a separate account and use separate equipment to access that account, because not that you'll have been viewing anything completely inappropriate on there, I'm sure, but if you log into that account, your own account in class, to show something to the pupils, they'll be able to see what you've viewed recently and various other recommended things, and there might be something on there that you don't want them to see. And like I said, it might not be fully inappropriate, but it might give too much away about you, or it just might not be something you want them to know. You might not want them to know that you're really interested in vegan recipes. You might not want them to know that you're obsessed with a certain pop star. You know, it's just personal information you might not want to share. We've had a question come through from Freya, who's going back to high school that she taught in, and she's Facebook friends with some parents already as their family friends. Should she unfriend them? As to check the school policy to see whether you're allowed to be friends with them, and if the policy says you can't be friends with them, then you need to have a conversation with those friends. Schools you went to, sorry, not taught at. That's an interesting one. Yes, well, the same thing applies really. It's about whether or not you're friends with them outside school and what the school policy says. So have a look at the school policy, but it might be a case that you need to unfriend them, or at the very least have a conversation about restricting how much of your content they can view. But I would think, again, you're not going to be posting anything too extreme on Facebook, hopefully. So there's not going to be anything they can use against you. Again, historically, people are a bit smarter about this now, but historically that we had a lot of cases for things like people posting about saying how much they hate their job. That's quite a common one that you still see today, but less so for us, because most people realise that's not an appropriate thing to be doing on Facebook. But there was a case a long time ago where I think it was the Daily Mail, basically ruined this head teacher's life with a headline that said, "Head teacher caught boasting about boob job on Facebook." And they had a picture of her on holiday with a cocktail in her hand, all tan. And that was on a national newspaper. That poor woman's life was turned upside down purely because she had put something on Facebook about having breast enhancement surgery. And hopefully we're less likely to see things like that happening today. But that was unfair for them to do that. So question 4, sorry, to go back to these. Is it okay to use Instagram when we're off sick? 61% said yes, and 17 said no, and the rest said not sure. Again, it's about context. If you phone in work sick because you're bedridden and feverish, and or you say you've got flu, so you're really ill, or then and your colleagues see you posting on Instagram pictures of, I don't know, your food, or you've got, in an extreme case, you might have gone out for the day, but if you're bedridden, I would hope people would realise that's not appropriate. But if they see that you're posting things, they're going, oh, I'm just binge watching Game of Thrones or The Fall or whatever else it might be, then think about how that they might interpret that, particularly if it's someone who might be having to pick up some of your work. It might not be wrong, but it might annoy your colleagues. Whereas if you're off with a broken leg, then they might have less of an issue with it because you're not bedridden as such, and you're just not allowed to be in school because of, well, for insurance purposes, usually it would be for a broken leg, as well as obviously your own health and recuperation. Can your employer sack you for something you post on Facebook? Most of you, 89% said yes, and the rest said no. I'm afraid to say to the 11%, but yes, you can be sacked for something you post on Facebook. Again, we've had cases where there's one in particular where a man was off work sick for work-related stress and anxiety. It was a very valid absence. And to help with his sort of recovery, he really enjoyed going to the theatre. So he was going to the theatre at weekends and posting all these things on Facebook that he was at the theatre and eating whatever it was. And in one of his meetings with the head teacher to talk about his absence, the head teacher put on the table printouts of all these Facebook posts and said, well, you're not well enough to be in work, but you're well enough to go to all these shows every weekend. So how do you rationalize the two? And it was obviously a very difficult conversation to have. But the worst part was that member said that he was only friends with 3 people from that school on Facebook, and none of them were the head teacher. So someone he thought of as a friend had seen those posts and taken exception to it and printed them off and shared them with the head teacher because they knew that he was off work still ill. So I don't want to scare you, but just think about how other people might interpret what you're posting on social media. Right, so I referred earlier to when hashtags go wrong. These are actually, 2 of these are quite tragic, the first one especially. Aurora. A few years ago, it was when one of the Christopher Nolan Batman films was out, there was a horrific mass shooting in a cinema at one of the screenings in a town called Aurora in America. And hashtag Aurora started trending on Twitter. Now, there was also a company that made clothes, women's clothes, and they had a dress that was called Aurora. Naming clothes is a new thing to me. Before I heard this, it never really occurred to me that people named clothes. But this company had named this dress Aurora, and it had been worn by Kim Kardashian. They saw that Aurora was tweeting and put out a corporate message saying, we're so glad to see Aurora's tweeting, look at Kim Kardashian wearing our Aurora dress. And understandably, they had completely misunderstood the situation, and understandably they got torn apart by it, and I think the company doesn't exist anymore. So that was a very tragic and unfortunate event that they didn't really, well, they misunderstood what was happening. Hobbit. Does anyone know what that might be? What it was intended to be? Think of CH, what is it as a country code? When the Hobbit film was released, they created social media hashtags with Hobbit and then the international country code, the letters for country code after it, and CH is Switzerland, I believe. So that was their attempt to promote the film in Switzerland, which obviously to English speakers, which today appears to not be me, but to English speakers means something else. The final one Now, who is dead? Um, again, this is pretty tragic because it involves a death, but that was actually now Thatcher is dead, as in Margaret Thatcher. But in America, they read it as now that Cher is dead. Not everyone, but a lot of people did. So it caused quite a bit of confusion, and because Cher clearly isn't dead, and she wasn't this morning. Last time I looked on social media, she was still alive and kicking. So again, it's about how things translate around the world, and trying to think about how people might misconstrue them. There's another one as well that's quite famous, which we haven't put on here because we didn't want to offend anyone. But it's about Susan. Oh God, what's her name? The one who won Britain's Got Talent. Susan Boyle. That's it. Sorry. And the hashtag for that was Susan's album party, which I think, well, look at it for yourself to figure out what it was. But it was, it could be misread as something quite different. Do it on the bus. I really missed that one, sorry. That was I think it was a Canadian bus company, and they were trying to encourage people to commute to work on the bus more rather than driving. So they launched this hashtag saying, "Tell us what you can do on the bus." And you can imagine the filthy-minded people, how that went. But funnily enough, whilst it did, it did sort of go wrong, it did end up trending. So although it wasn't what they intended, it kind of worked, and they got a lot of publicity about it. I believe it made it onto the news there. So it worked, but not in the way they had intended. So just to summarize, because I know I've talked quite a lot, but summarize the main tips. Checking your settings on all your profiles and your accounts, just to make sure that you have got the security you think you have. Something else to be aware of is that occasionally they will do some sort of system update on a platform, and it might reset the settings. This happened actually with me on Facebook quite a few years ago now, because I've deleted my Facebook account now. But I had it all tied down, and then I didn't realize Facebook did an update, and the default was to put all the settings back down to it being open. And it was only when someone told me they'd seen pictures of me at someone's hen do that I thought, oh, it was a bit of a shock. So don't just set them once and think it's all right. Do go back and check things now and again. Same with Googling yourself and looking through your digital footprint. Don't just do it once. Check it every now and then, just to see how you are, maybe a couple of times a year. If you find anything that you don't like, you can improve your digital footprint. So, for example, LinkedIn always comes up quite high on a Google search. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, create one. For those of you who don't know what LinkedIn is, it's kind of like Facebook, but less. It's a professional sort of one. So you can put a photo of yourself if you want. You put your qualifications, where you've worked, how long you've worked there, and pretty much it. And then people link to you, and then they tell you that they kind of approve your skills. So you start having people telling you you've got skills that you never knew you had. It's a bit gimmicky, but it is a very professional presentation of yourself. So it's a very safe platform for you to put on there if you wanted to have the first few searches at least being a bit more a bit different to what you find when you first Google yourself. Similar thing with Flickr, that can sometimes come up quite high. So if you don't have a Flickr account, you can create one and post pictures of your dinner, your pets, trees, vegetables that you've grown during lockdown, your sourdough pet culture, anything you want that's safe, and it can come quite high up in the searches. So again, when people Google you, that'll come up higher. Similar thing with Twitter, you can set up a safe Twitter account and try and bury anything that isn't that you don't like. So if there's something that I said, like I said before, if there's something that isn't terrible, but it's just not what you want to see, first of all. Do things like that, or consider things like that, having them moved down. That's if you can't get them removed. If there is something really terrible that you don't want people seeing, and you tried yourself to get it removed, and the whoever's hosting that won't remove it, do contact us, because we've spent a lot of time over the last few years trying to build relationships with various companies, YouTube and Facebook, but to get so that we have a speedier way of having problems resolved. They won't always remove everything, but usually they're pretty good nowadays. Rate My Teacher is a different kettle of fish, because we've tried to get negative reviews removed, and they said, well, no, because that's the whole purpose of their website. If it's something that is offensive, or well, they consider it to be offensive, or it's abusive, then they will remove it. But because they're hosted in America, we don't really have any kind of legal recourse with them on that. But we have had some success in getting things removed, but it is a challenge. But as I said, if you're having problems, contact us and we can take things up for you. Going back to the using Twitter on, not using your personal phone for work. Similar thing goes for handing out your phone numbers. I know it's been difficult during lockdown, particularly initially when schools closed and everyone was having to teach from home. But again, most schools will have mobile phones that are allocated for school use. So we would have expected, and a lot of schools did do this, to be fair to them, they would allocate those phones to specific people, and those would be the nominated members of staff that would be responsible for phoning parents. So you weren't left with having to use your own mobile phone and risk parents getting your number, because, I mean, I don't know if anyone's worked outside of teaching before this, but has anyone ever worked in a job where someone's got hold of your phone number or your personal or your work named email address and they just won't let you go? You know, that's what happens. Well-meaning parents will be phoning you at all times of day on the weekend, and they say, "Oh well, ever so sorry for bothering you on a weekend. But I just wanted to check, on Monday, does Freya need to bring in her X, Y, and Z?" So protect yourself and keep things professional and private. Similar thing with personal equipment, especially since the introduction of GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulations. It was brought in to really limit the abuse of our data. Our data, as I'm sure you all know, is a very valuable resource that, you know, there was the Cambridge Analytica scandal and all that, that companies have been selling far and wide. So the General Data Protection Regulations were brought in to make sure that we have to give more permissions for them to be able to use it. It puts more restrictions on companies with what they do with our data. That has an impact on anyone who holds data. That includes schools. And by data, it's not just digital information, it includes copies of your passport or photos of you. It includes CCTV footage. So an employer or a company has to be able to justify why they're holding certain information for you. And if somebody makes a complaint, they can request copies of any information that is held on them. And if you've got information in your personal computer, it can make it a bit awkward. So we would recommend keeping things separate as far as possible. Again, I know it sounds obvious, but don't post information about yourself that you wouldn't want other people to see. I used to say, don't post anything about yourself that you wouldn't want to see on the front page of the Sun newspaper. But that, again, that's extreme, but it's worth thinking about, because, like I said, that poor head teacher in London, goodness knows why the newspaper thought it was appropriate to print that story about her having cosmetic surgery. It's just not appropriate. And all it does is make someone's life that much harder to cope with. It's just not worth it. So think about what you're posting. You know, those late night drunk social media posts or whatever it might be. Not that I'm saying you will drink and use social media, but just have to think about it. Some of this I've already talked about. If there's any, if there are any incidents, this is really looking at inappropriate comments about you. So bullying or harassment from parents or even colleagues and pupils. Keep a record of it. So take a screenshot if you can. Hopefully you all know how to do that on your phones or even on a laptop. Make a note of the date, time, witnesses, although unless it's a group chat, it's probably not going to be a case of witnesses. But you might think, if something does happen, you might think, oh, I'll remember that information. But sometimes it's worth making a note anyway, just to be on the safe side. A note of caution, and again, hopefully this won't happen because again, this is uncommon, but if you are sent any inappropriate pictures by pupils, say, or even by an adult, but of pupils, don't be careful what you do with that photo, because if you send that on to someone else or take a copy of it, if it's an indecent image of a child, then you could be classed as distributing child pornography, which is obviously a very serious offence. So if it's of that level of an inappropriate image, then immediately speak to your head teacher, contact us as well, because there'll need to be a more formal investigation. Like I said, hopefully that won't happen, but just be mindful that if it's an indecent image of a child, you shouldn't be keeping a copy of it. Well, you shouldn't be distributing it and sharing it around to even innocently, report it to their teacher immediately. Speak to your senior manager about the offending comment or site, as I've already said. Contact us for advice. We talked again about the administrators removing content and how that's a bit of a mixed bag. It's a lot better than it was, but again, if you're struggling with that, do contact us because it's something that we can help with our contacts that we've been building up over a few years. We will take legal action on your behalf if that's something that you want. We are here for you. We are a teachers' trade union here to support you through your career and try and make it as enjoyable as possible, and to protect you and support you if an unfortunate event does occur. But we have taken legal action and we will continue to take legal action to defend our members if it's necessary. In the vast majority of cases, it isn't necessary. So, schools have come a long way. When we first started doing this presentation, when I was probably 7 years ago, 8 years, this was a new thing for schools. The technology wasn't that new, but schools just weren't prepared to deal with it. And we were having to, it was obviously a more dated version of this presentation because a lot of the social media went around, and some of them went, oh, we didn't discuss TikTok, but so things have come a long way, and we tend to see that employers, head teachers are a lot more supportive now. If negative comments have been reported, so if a parent's been saying something inappropriate on site, we tend to find that head teachers will call that parent in, or some senior leadership in school will speak to that parent and talk to them about why that's inappropriate. So, as I said, things have come a long way. So support is out there, and if you do see something, please don't feel that you need to just suffer. It's a challenging enough time as it is, and you shouldn't have to deal with any kind of harassment or abuse. You can contact us. The best way at the moment is email. That's email address there is our member support team or our advice team. It's staffed by people who are very experienced in dealing with employment law and giving advice to members. We also have a network of representatives and caseworkers across the whole of the UK. So if you need face-to-face support, we can arrange that for you. Most of the contact we get is people just asking for the initial advice to find out what their rights are. But as I said, if you need more support, that is there for you, and it can be face-to-face, although obviously in the current climate, we're finding that a lot of employers are having meetings virtually. But anyway, we'll get support for you, don't worry. Our website address is there as well. We have a student hub. I know that most of you will be NQTs rather than students, but there are NQT resources on there as well that you can access. As members, you can access everything. So do feel free to have a look on the website. Our induction guide for new teachers is going to be going on the website hopefully by the end of the week. It's just been approved today, and that is a PDF document, but it's essentially a step-by-step guide through your induction that covers all of your rights and key dates when things should be happening, so when you should be having feedback or meetings, and because as a new teacher you do have additional rights to support. So have a look out for that. I'd say hopefully by the end of the week that'll be it. Oh, I said about our student hub. That's the link to the student and NQT hub as well on there. I said before that this is the last week of our summer webinars. We've got a presentation tomorrow actually on NQT induction. This is England induction. So, and the Welsh inductions in the afternoon. We've already had Scotland and Northern Ireland. So the Wales induction for new teachers is at 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, and the England induction is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. But you can get details on our website, or they should have been in the email that was sent to you at the end of last week. But that talks about your induction rights in more detail. Oh, sorry, let me just have a look at the chat and see if there's anything else I haven't addressed. That's interesting. Laura's posted to everyone about the PGC issues saying, think about the court case before we do anything questionable. It's a very good point. You know, sometimes well, I don't know if you do, but I do this sometimes. You go to do something and then there's a little nagging voice in the back of your head that says, is that a good idea? Like throwing a snowball as an example. And you think, is that a good idea? And then you do it and someone complains and you think that was a very bad idea. I thought it was fun and it was a bad idea. Listen to the nagging voice in the back of your head that tells you it's a bad idea. You know, it's something we should probably all do a little bit more often. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask away. If not, then I'll be winding it up, and we will send you a certificate, and I think it's a copy of this presentation as well. And hopefully, well, thank you all for joining first of all, but hopefully we'll see you all again at one of our future events. I say see you again, talk at you again and interact with you via chat. As soon as we're able to have face-to-face events on a large scale, obviously we'll let you know and invite you along. But thank you all very much for joining. And like I said, any problems, get in touch. And I really wish you all the very best of luck when you start back to school next week, isn't it? Yes. Good luck, everyone, and thank you again.